Welcome to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast, and today a very unusual but special episode celebrating our 10-year anniversary and also a bit of a Christmas special as well. We are joined by Neil Clough and Nicole Plinston from our very own Prime. So, as we always like to do, I know who you both are incredibly well. People listening in, some may do, some may not. So, Nicole, for the listeners, please tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
So I'm Nicole Plinston. I am one of the co-founders and directors here at Prime. What I do, a bit of everything. I work alongside the guys, do a lot of support work around account management, business development, and help Neil run this business as smoothly as possible.
Which you do very, very well. Neil?
I'm Neil Clough, I'm MD and co-founder as well, obviously alongside Nicole, and I talk to a lot of people. I think that's what I do day to day. Well, yeah, that's it. So let's call it motivate people, I would say my role is, but obviously running the business day to day as much as trying to keep staff morale high.
Brilliant. Well, this is going to be a great episode today. Obviously, I've known you for 10 years now and got to know you both very, very well, but looking forward to unpacking the journey that we've been on, the trials, tribulations, successes, challenges. But as we always like to do, we won't change what we do on the podcast. Very interested to hear how you both got into and started in sales and why you even started in sales. So, Neil, how did you even get into the sales industry in the first place?
Oh, it's a good story, Kyle.
Let's hear it.
Mainly because I'm not very good at anything else. But I was probably a failed footballer at the time. That was a dream. That wasn't probably going as well as I liked, although semi-professional wasn't too bad of a claim. Moved to Manchester when I was 21, unfortunately, after my father passing away when I was quite young, but it gave me the motivation to feel like, what could I do to make my life better? So got a job. The only job I could get was in administration, and my sister had to get me the job as well. It was where she was working, because let's just say my grades at school weren't too great. So filing the direct debits, and then I saw a guy drive into the car park in a Porsche. So I asked what he did, and he was a sales director. So that was it. I thought one day I'll get a Porsche, and sales was what I chose to do from there.
Nice, love it. You mentioned your grades weren't very good. If you can remember, what were the grades?
I don't think there's enough letters in the alphabet to go there. Let's just say academically wasn't my thing. Kicking a football was definitely more what I was interested in. But I got an E in French.
An E in French?
I got an E in French.
Yeah. That's good.
Absolutely.
We'll come back onto that later, because I think it's a really interesting point with changing the perception of sales on the fact that actually your background, going to uni, all this stuff doesn't necessarily matter if you obviously look at what you've achieved and where you are now. Nicole, how and why the hell did you get into sales?
So interesting. I was about 16. I was doing my A-levels and I had a few jobs along the side. And one of those jobs was selling timeshare. So that was probably my first taste of sales. I didn't really mind it, and it paid good money, which is, I guess that was quite important to me at the time. So finished my A-levels, moved to London, took a telesales job, and it kind of just grew from there.
Nice. Where were the timeshares that you were selling?
I think it was Spain until a long time ago. I just remember interrupting everyone just as they were watching Coronation Street or EastEnders, and it never went down well.
No.
Got a lot of rejection.
You can't interrupt Corrie. That is not allowed. That is frowned upon.
It was fun.
So that's how you both started in sales then, all those years ago. Dare I ask how many years ago? No one will say that. But then obviously where we are now is founding Prime. But before we get into kind of how that come about, because obviously I know there's a story behind it, how you two met and why you even started the business. How did your careers in sales progress from the moments you just mentioned just to before Prime? So Neil, come back to you for that.
Yeah, sure. Obviously a bit of an interesting story, fun story, but really kind of my career kind of progressed just through working up the ladder. I was more motivated by progression, so I always wanted to be a sales manager. Most people get into sales mainly because they're motivated by money, but for me it was just about being responsible, getting into management, becoming a leader, something I was really passionate about. So I kind of just went down the path of anything I could do to get into be a sales manager, which is what I did. And then built my way up to obviously working a number of companies into regional kind of sales roles and kind of managing multi-site kind of operations and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool, but the kind of journey took a bit of a twist then when I finally got a chance to get on a TV show on the BBC Apprentice, and to be fair, that gave me the motivation after that to, you know, become an entrepreneur and back myself and actually, you know, go and launch a business which I've always spoke about doing but never probably had the guts to do it.
Yeah.
That gave me the confidence to do it.
Why do you think you hadn't maybe had the guts or confidence to do it before The Apprentice?
I think when you're working in sales, you can start to get financially rewarded. So obviously you start to earn good money. I remember I used to get a new pair of trainers to go out every weekend, you know what I mean? I had enough money just to buy what I wanted due to commission that I was getting. And I think the problem is with that, then you become quite stable. You become successful in a business, you're progressing up, so your salary starts to increase. So then to take the risk of starting up a business where there's no guaranteed salary, you know, who the hell would do that? So I think it was more the risk, but The Apprentice gave me an opportunity to win-win. I thought, if I win, then I'll go into business with Ward Sugar and, you know, surely that'll succeed. And if I don't win, but I try and kind of do myself proud and show my skill set, then maybe I'll be able to go it alone afterwards. And that was the plan. Although I got fired for not having a plan, there was actually a plan in my head of what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And really important question, did you get the Porsche in the end?
I did. It was bright and luminous purple. It was the only one I could afford, but I did have a Porsche. Yeah, convertible.
Nice.
So the age I'm getting to now, I might have to get another one.
Oh really?
Well, you
purple.
know, midlife crisis. You know what I mean? That's the situation. But yeah, the purple Porsche was a big achievement because it was something I set out for many years before.
I look forward to seeing it make a comeback. And on The Apprentice, we've got to touch on it a little bit. What was that experience like? So it was 2013, wasn't it? You were on. What was the experience like?
Absolutely amazing. Obviously something I've always watched a show, screamed at the TV, what are you idiots doing? Then I became one of the idiots. So I think it was amazing, but it was just more the experience to actually go on there. But I think kind of bringing this back to something you mentioned before, I never went to university. I think every other candidate on there was a graduate, they'd been to university, some of them were already entrepreneurs. I remember one candidate had 2 degrees, you know, check that out, I was a bit greedy in it, and I kind of went on there from Warrington, you know, no, humble beginnings, no degree, etc. But it goes to show for me that work ethic can outperform talent when talent doesn't work. So he kind of gave me the belief after, no matter what you do, if you work hard at it, you can be successful no matter what other people tell you about their experiences.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a great message just for anyone listening to this as well that's considering sales as a potential career. It doesn't necessarily matter what you've done in the past or what you did education-wise. Nicole, so it started interrupting people, watching Coronation Street at EastEnders. How did your sales career progress from there?
So I got a telesales job in selling car insurance, which was brilliant. It was such good foundations actually. I think I enjoyed the culture and camaraderie of sales more than the actual job, but it was great, commission and things like that. So yeah, it was a really good starting point. And then somebody said to me one day, oh, you should try recruitment. And I was like, never knew what it was. And then they mentioned the title recruitment consultant. I thought that sounds really fancy. That sounds cool. I'll give that a go. So transitioned into recruitment, and I think doing the full 360 rather than just the sales piece was really insightful. And I think that for me was the hook then. I felt I had a lot more control over processes and ended up doing pretty well in recruitment to the point where I moved into doing sales training, recruitment training for a few businesses, and then moved out of recruitment and back into sales, but doing sales training for Virgin, which was somewhere I probably ended up for a lot longer than I ever anticipated. Amazing organisation, amazing opportunity. And stayed there for a number of years, and then my path took a slightly different turn. Didn't end up on The Apprentice, didn't end up on TV, ended up becoming a mum, and that then completely changes where your career is going and what you're going to do. So big decisions had to be made at that point, and then I decided to set up my own sales training company, and kind of went from there. So big decisions, as Neil mentioned, it's quite a thing, taking the risk and setting up your own business when you've gone from being quite stable in an organisation, doing well, progressing well, to then go, should I take the leap of faith and set up? But sometimes circumstances push you that way, and you've got to look forwards, not back. And yeah, that's where I ended up, setting up my own company, doing sales training, and predominantly a lot of my clients then became recruitment companies I'd worked with over the years. So I think that's where my path started to creep back into recruitment again.
Yeah. and then some of them probably ended up becoming clients of Prime as well. But
certainly did.
on the, one thing you mentioned there is interesting. I think a lot of people listening to this will be inspired, particularly women in sales, by your journey and what you've been on. Yours is slightly different, and you had already had your own business before Prime.
Yeah.
What was going through your head, and what made you do that? Because leaving a stable job and a salary, becoming a mum, you know, a lot of life events happening at the same time. What was it that made you go, actually, I'm going to add something else in the mix as well and start and run my own business?
Yeah. I loved my job at Virgin, absolutely loved it, but it meant travelling all over the country. I was like a national sales trainer, so I would be everywhere. And the cost of childcare to go back with 2 children rather than just 1 and do all the travelling just wasn't feasible. It wasn't I wanted to change careers or leave. It wasn't feasible to live and bring up 2 kids and be able to do that job. So had to make the tough decision with my husband to shift and put a bit of faith in myself and set up, and I was quite lucky. I'd always tried to keep a good network. I think one of the things in business is relationships are key. So over the years I'd always stayed in touch with people I'd worked with in the past, so they were great people to reach out at and just say like, can you have some sales training? So it worked really well. It started slow, picked up a lot quicker, and then before I knew it, I had more work than I knew what to do with. So it was tough, but I think we talk a lot about having a why, and if you've got a really good why, you'll make anything work. And I think having 2 really young kids and knowing you've got to provide for them is a very good why. It's a non-negotiable. You've got to make it successful. So I think I've always been that kind of person where I can't fail. I have to succeed regardless. So yeah, that's where we ended up with a training company.
Brilliant. Love it. Great story. Very inspirational. And that brings us on to the neon sign that's on the wall, Prime. You've just come off...
Am I pink?
You are? No, you're not pink.
It's on brand if you are.
I
So
feel
it's
like
fine.
I'm glowing.
It's fine. So you just come off the back of The Apprentice. I'm sure, you know, bit of a celebrity for a little bit of a time, if you can call it that. Celebrity for a bit of time. Nicole, you were, you know, running your own business, you know, doing well. Obviously, a bit slower, but got there. How did Prime? And I don't know who wants to say the answer to this one, but how did Prime even come about?
You probably get 2 different answers.
Let's hear both,
the
shall we? Go on.
Yeah, go on.
No, you go first.
No, you go.
Okay, so after my experience on The Apprentice, I decided, as I mentioned, to go for it. Give me the confidence from doing relatively well in the show that actually I can turn my hand to anything. So actually the risk of leaving my job, if I back myself enough, as mentioned, I can make a success of it. So I set up a sales training company because fundamentally that's my skill, and advice actually that Lord Sugar gave was focus your business on what you know and not what you want to know. So sales being all I've ever done, the business, if I focus on sales, I've got a far greater chance of making it successful, right? So set up a sales training company and was like Nicole, getting really busy with it. I think because I did have my 5 minutes of fame, maybe people were more bought into me than maybe it would have been if I hadn't have done it. But every time I went to do sales training, I saw an opportunity because people would ask, do you know any great salespeople? And fundamentally, great salespeople make a great sales team, and a great sales team make a great company. So the more and more that got asked to me, the more I started to realise actually recruitment, getting great salespeople is a great opportunity. And that's kind of where that came around. And we met with Nicole because Nicole also had a sales training organisation. So kind of when we got talking about it, I kind of had a bit of a vision of where I feel I could take a training and recruitment concept. And it was just an idea, and then Nicole made the idea much better, and kind of we came up with Prime fundamentally, and that's kind of how it all began.
Does that sound accurate, Nicole?
Relatively.
What's not accurate?
Well, yeah, what would you change?
That was spelling mistakes.
Oh right.
Let's hear about these spelling mistakes, shall we?
So obviously Neil set up a sales training company, similar market sector, past cost, and Neil had some books to download for free on his website. NWC Consulting.
Just remember the year I got in French. So my English, by the way, wasn't much better.
So then he sent me an email saying, I just wondered if you had any feedback for these books, and I haven't read them. So I was like, just a bit busy, I'll come back to you. So I quickly downloaded them. I think I had downloaded them, I just hadn't read them. So I was on the train on the way back from work and I started reading them, and I'm just got this really annoying habit of attention to detail. I have to proofread everything.
Yeah, don't we know?
Yeah. So I was like, I got to the point where I was just highlighting all of these mistakes, and then I think I got to the end of it, I'm going to have to say something. It's good, but it's just awful reading when it's so many. If you're like me, I found it really uncomfortable to read by the end of it. So
anything right with it?
So I emailed back and did the whole positive feedback. Like, yeah, they're great, really insightful. By the way, there's a few mistakes that you might just...
No, not a few. I think you had it pinpointed per page, per mistake.
I did.
There was an index that came back with it.
Literally, I did actually then put, if you look on this page and this and this page, and there was just this long list. And I was like, anyway, I hope you find that helpful. And then Neil called me and it was like, thanks for the feedback. Should we have a chat?
The bit that's interesting there, though, is why did you then want to go into business with someone that has just ripped your ebooks to shreds when I should imagine coming off The Apprentice?
That's hard.
Well, all right, well, maybe. But what made you want to go into business with Nicole when there was hundreds of other people that were probably telling you how amazing they were, how great you were, how good the content was, didn't even look at the spelling mistakes? Yeah. Surely people might think, actually, I think we're going to business with Nicole.
Well, I think that's the truth, though, isn't it? Because if you go into business with someone and tell you how great you are all the time, then maybe they're not being directly honest. And I think I sent out, must have been about 100 feedback, and I did generally get probably 98 back. And honestly, there was only one that kind of had, let's call it constructive feedback in there. And
development.
Yeah, so for me, that meant to me that person was actually honest, because I also know that my spelling can be atrocious, as you all know, right? So actually I thought, well, that's probably the case. Even though I've read them a million times, probably is the case. And someone being honest is far better than someone just telling you what you want to hear. So that was why. And then the truth behind it, as I had this vision about recruitment and training, I was thinking, if there's an amazing trainer that I could work with, then that would make the business successful, because fundamentally I'm a sales guy, that's what I'm passionate about, it's what I am. If someone was amazing at training, then we could put the concept together. So as soon as I got that feedback, I looked at the email address and it said Talent Rising, sounded like a training organisation. So I thought I'd give Nicole a call and see if she'd be interested in the training aspect of what I was looking to do. And then obviously,
amazing trainers.
Well, that's how I opened the call. That's it. Do you know any amazing trainer? Oh, you are a trainer, right? Excellent. And that's kind of how it happened, really.
Yeah, it's
Love it. What a story. And that's obviously how Prime was born. Why the name Prime?
Well, it was a good name before Amazon Prime, the drink Prime,
Drink.
all the other primes. It was great. The amount of people that call us up now asking if they're working for a drinks company. Yeah. Why Prime? I suppose the real reason behind it is when we set the organisation up, we knew that kind of our skill set might not be in the creative field, is fair to say. So we had an advisory board that helped us in terms of someone involved in the business that had a marketing agency that helped do all that side of the business, that made us look far better than we were when it was just us. And we did an exercise with them. To be fair, it was really, really useful about vision and values, which we probably never would have done to start a business, but we got the right advice and we did it. And the word prime is also the main meaning for things like being first, quality, and they're the things that we felt were what we wanted to do in recruitment business, is make it honest, make it quality, trying to be the best at what we can be. And that's where Prime came from, if I've got it right.
Yeah. There were some different choices on there that were...
Well, no.
Can you remember any of the alternatives?
Well, no, okay. I know where Nicole's going to go with
NWC.
I wanted to call it Neil Clough Recruitment. Well, that was... Well, maybe not, but not far off. Nicole went, I don't think that's a good idea. So, yeah, we went with Prime.
I'm trying to think of all the others, but yeah, there were some atrocious ones. But it's really hard, because you think once you've picked it, that's it. It's stuck then. Yeah. It's a big thing to rebrand. You've got to be big and good to rebrand. So we knew that whatever we went with, we'd have to stick with, and I pushed the pink, you pushed the prime.
Yeah. And now it's a neon light on the wall, which I've always wanted. So
it took us 10 years, but we got the neon light in.
Yeah, it did. What a light it is.
Along with the name Prime, then came the tagline, which this podcast is also very much named, changing the perception of sales. Nicole, where did that come from, and why was that the tagline that was chosen?
It's a really good question, and I think it just came out of the fact that we were looking to do something different in the industry. And when, as Neil said, when you're doing training, everyone's asking, do you know any good salespeople? Do you know any good salespeople? And there seems to be such a massive shortage of talent of salespeople. And when you really break it down, it's because of people's perception of what sales is. They think back to the old sort of 1970s, 1980s car salesman, and that's their perception of sales. So the stigma associated to sales isn't an attractive one for the younger generation of today, and they're also not educated on it as a career. So we know that in many different industry sectors, the talent pool can get smaller and smaller if the industry itself isn't promoted in the right way. So we saw an opportunity. There was no one else in the market really doing what we were wanting to do, which was not just find people, but give them education on what it takes to be great at sales and incorporate the training as a way of showcasing you can do this as a career, and it's a really good career. But also the education piece around why sales is an amazing career and what you can get from it. So I think the skill set you learn, yourself learning sales is a skill set that helps you in so many other areas of your life. So the things that we can do and achieve in our life have probably been stemmed from what we've learned by being salespeople in the first place. It is an amazing career. It's just not promoted. There's no degree to be in sales. There is obviously marketing and many other roles, but not sales. So it was a really good opportunity to combine our training with our sales and recruitment, but also say to people, look, we can help you really understand what sales is as a career. And the more we did it, the more people we could get into it, the more the word was spread. And ultimately, we've built really successful careers off the back of being in sales. So we know what an amazing career it is and how rewarding it is. It's about just sharing that with more people, and I think that's what we decided to come up with the tagline before. It was more of our mission statement and vision, wasn't it? We wanted to change the perception of sales, make it a career of choice, get more people into the industry. How do we do that? And that's when we came up with the training day.
I think the thing is with it is if you ask the people closest to you, so everyone listening to the podcast, maybe ask the 5 people closest to you, what do you think of salespeople? I'd be interested to know how many of them are positive versus negative, and that's the issue. But when you actually break it down, sales is the lifeblood of any business. So without sales, a business can't be successful. So why is it not the most important role within an organisation? And the reason why it isn't, and from my perspective, is that because you don't have to have a qualification necessarily to be a salesperson. You don't have to be a degree. If I want to be a doctor, you're going to want to make sure they have the right qualifications. But if you want to be a salesperson, anyone can do it. The reality is they can't. So for us, it was about changing the perception, promoting sales as a career, and we're here, I suppose, as entrepreneurs, business owners, after 10 years, because we started in sales. So I think sales should be applauded and should be something that people are proud to do, rather than trying to change the name to business development executive or whatever the case, rather than being a salesperson, right? That's what I believe I am, and we've done all right with that. So we're just trying to get that message out to more people to be proud to be in sales.
Love it. And I think one thing I really bought into all those years ago was the passion for sales in the industry, which was evident to see there. Was there anything in mind that you had with changing the perception of sales that would have to happen that you would go, actually, yeah, we've kind of achieved the mission there? Because I know we spoke around education, you spoke about, being a doctor, you needing a degree. Is there anything you kind of had in mind as to, yeah, we've achieved that goal or on the way to achieving it?
I'm interested to see what you think of that. I think I don't think there is. I don't think we'll ever sit back and think we did it, because I don't think you could probably change the perception for everyone. But I think we're doing a really damn good job of trying to change it by every placement we make. And I think I'm really proud that we've trained 14,000 graduate stroke trainees through the process, that every one of them has gone away with a sales skill that they didn't have when we met them. So I think we're doing a good job of it, but I don't think the perception will ever change fully, is my view.
Yeah, I think it is changing and evolving. It will never be 100% where we love it to be, but
it's better now than it ever was.
Yeah.
I think people now are more open about working in sales than they ever were, but they're still going to have that stigma.
We need more primes. We need more businesses out there with teams like ours. So everyone we've hired predominantly didn't really look at recruitment or sales as a career. We've educated them on it. They've come in, done incredibly well at it, and gone on to educate others. So I feel like it is a feeding ground that keeps growing, evolving. It's not just obviously about sales career. We've talked about gender a lot, and we look at our top performers from our last financial year, all female. things like that are changing. The percentage of females in sales and career now has gone up from like it was 23% to nearly 30% now worldwide. So it is definitely changing. We can't fix it all, but we can definitely have an impact. And I think our Google reviews and looking at how many candidates we've placed over the years that are now leaders in businesses hiring for their sales teams, all of those are elements of us having tried to have some way of impacting the market and changing that perception. How we test whether we've fixed it completely.
I think things like that.
What do you think, Carl? You've been here long enough.
Yeah, throw that one back at you.
Oh, back at me. I thought I was interviewing you two today. I would agree in that. I don't think we'll ever sit back and go, oh, we made it, we've done it. I also think that's a positive thing though. I think any vision that you have, the idea is it's almost, you can't comprehend ever being able to complete it. Yeah. But I think what you said there, Nicole, around things have changed over the 10 years, and I'd like to think that we've contributed to that. I think 10 years from now, hopefully things become much more positive, whether that be diversity, people's opinions on sales, more people going into it. If we can sit back and go, okay, there's still work to do, but we've massively contributed towards that, I think that would be us well on our way.
Yeah, I agree. I think visions and I suppose the motto and the tagline, what we're trying to do is, I think they should be something that is so far in the future, so extreme that you reach every day to get there, but you might not never get there by the end. But think of where you've got to if you didn't have that stretching vision at the start. So I think we're doing a good job of it. So hopefully another 10 years we'll have done even better.
So coming back onto changing the perception of sales, obviously that was the vision. Not that we're here to sell Prime for those listening, it'd be nice to do so. How, when you came up with the process and the concept, how was that designed to help with changing the perception of sales?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think going back probably 10 years ago, and things have definitely changed for the better now, but I think there was many businesses out there that would hire, let's say, 4 trainees or graduates, whatever you want to call it, people new to sales, never done it before, hoping that maybe 2 of them may work out. When the reality is, that's probably going to be the case if you don't show them how to sell and give them the training development needed. So if you do give them the training development needed, then you know what, 4 out of 4 might work out. And guess what happens then? You've got 4 people contributing to the bottom line. So I think that was very old, stiff, stereotypical way of people recruiting salespeople. We wanted to try and help give a solution to that, because in defense of many clients, maybe they don't have the foundations and training, maybe they don't have the knowledge of being able to train or the funds to be able to do it. So our concept came up of kind of putting the training recruitment together, giving the candidates some free training. So actually they go in there with a bit of heads up of what to expect, and they can hit obviously the ground running from doing it. So I think the process works because of that. And I then think going a little bit deeper than that as well, the bit that we tried to change, our competitors run an assessment day model, but from my experiences, the candidates, if not successful, don't learn anything from assessment day. We wanted to be able to add value to the candidates that not only we place, but also we don't place, because we might not have the right opportunity. It doesn't make them not a great salesperson in the future. So we screen all the candidates first, 2 telephone interviews, a face-to-face interview, and then only the candidates we believe have got the right why and want the career in sales through the right drivers and motivations that we believe we can enhance and develop, then come to the training day. So a smaller group, high talent of people we can develop into great salespeople. So I think the process works for those reasons.
Love it. And I believe still the only business in the UK that gives candidates free training before they get the job, I think. We'll hold on to that anyway. I'm pretty sure that is true. Coming on to then the journey of Prime, we've got 10 years to unpack and not that long to do so. I want to get into, first of all, advice you would give to people. Let's start with, we've spoken about starting the business. Let's say there's people listening to this, whether they work in sales or maybe they don't, that have got dreams and aspirations of wanting to launch their own business. What advice would you give to those people?
2 bits, if I may, Kyle. Not like me to give one bit.
As many as you wish.
The first bit for me is to find a business partner or partners. If you think about it, one person can be good at many things, but imagine how good 2 people can be, particularly if they complement their skill set. So I think me and Nicole work differently. We have many different views. We work differently in different things. But because of that, that works really, really well. So I think partnering with someone that gives you a better skill set, but gives you, double the opportunity to be successful. And then the second one would be to just do it. So many people, myself included, don't do it because of the fear of failure, when the reality is, if you're thinking about setting up a business, if you are entrepreneurial, the chances are you'll probably get another job. So for me, it is about just doing it and having the confidence and self-belief that you can do it.
Just do it and find a good partner. Anything you would add, Nicole?
So we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? And I think one thing to really highlight is adaptability needs to become like your superpower. Well, Neil says that's his word. Because it's particularly in recruitment, the only constant in recruitment is change. Everything is consistently changing. So the market's changing. 1 minute it's candidate driven, the next minute it's client driven, then there's something going on in the economy, then we hit COVID. So there is always change, and if you can't adapt quickly and be flexible in your approach, you're going to really struggle as a business. So I think we've learned probably over the last 10 years, being able to adapt is absolutely critical to your success. So I would say setting up a business, doesn't matter what industry you're in, adaptability is going to be really, really key.
Just to add to that as well, there's never the perfect time. I think a lot of people are waiting, I'll do it in the new year, or I'll wait till after COVID, or I'll do it. The reality is the perfect time will never ever come.
Yeah.
So just go for it.
It's like start Monday with a diet. It's always
Absolutely.
something. Yeah, start.
Well, we're at that time of year.
Yeah, we are. January, everyone, gyms will be full again. I think what's important to talk about, you're giving advice there for people starting a business. Nicole, you said things are always changing, whether that be the market. Over the last 10 years, there's been plenty of things to navigate. What have been some of the key challenges? Because we can talk about how amazing and great and easy things have been. That's not been the case at all. But what have been some of the big challenges over the last 10 years?
It's always a challenge. I think recruitment as a whole is a challenge, because either you've not got enough roles to fill, or you've not got enough candidates to fill them with, right? So all the recruiters out there will kind of understand where I'm going with that. But we're a sales-based business, and sales, you are only as good as your last week, your last month, and so on. So it can be quite a pressurised environment. But I think the biggest challenge, for me was COVID. We've actually been through a few, haven't we? We've had recession, cost of living, COVID. COVID was the biggest challenge because, we didn't know what was going to happen. And I think, the three of us really dealt with it in the best way we could, because I remember that, that dreaded day when it happened, me and Kyle were like, I was saying the tanks were going to be on the street. Kyle was like, there's no way a tank's coming down Prestwich. I'm like, you wait. It was like it's going to happen. You're going to have to make sure you be in your house. And we had these debates, didn't we? But then literally all these things just happened. And then there was no furlough at the time. We didn't know what to do. And I think the thing we did was not panic. And then the one thing that I think really reaped rewards now, and has done now 10 years in, is we thought, well, actually, let's do what we always do in business. Let's do what Prime is built on, which is forget about selling, weird for a sales business, and focus on where we can add value. So we actually launched webinar series, if you remember it, and we got hundreds and hundreds of people coming on, and we were doing how to get a job in a crisis, clients how to hire in a crisis. Then we started doing training on, how you can get a better personal brand, and I think going out there to do good and add value meant that when we came out of COVID, the clients wanted to work with us because they actually seen that we're doing it for the best of helping people. And I think that's, the biggest thing that I feel from being an absolute trauma and going through the biggest challenge we've ever faced, actually taking a step back, forgetting the pressure and thinking, what can we do, actually came to, now repay us 10 times over.
Yeah. It was almost a case of doing something with no expectation of anything in return that I think landed so well. And Nicole, challenges. What have been your biggest challenges over the last 10 years?
Don't say me.
That was really
Working with Neil.
COVID is obviously the one. I think working with you two from day one. No, I think that in itself is a challenge, because you guys have a real desire to be successful and drive forwards and go after. And I think one of the biggest challenges is always remembering not to lose sight of your purpose and prioritise that over any quick wins or immediate results. And I think over the years in what we do, it's very easy to think there's an opportunity there's an opportunity there. Go after the quick wins, particularly post-COVID when the market went crazy. and losing sight then of what our purpose is, what our mission is. And we've always been built on quality as a business. Everything has been about stay consistent, stick to the process, deliver a really high quality service, and the results will come. But we have to be disciplined to do that. So we've always talked about discipline and consistency to get that end result. That's not always easy to stick to when there's opportunities there that you're going, well, do you know what, I could just do that, or I could just deviate off here, or there's all these different things going on and people are saying, oh, actually go into this market, go into that market. It's very easy then to think, right, I'll do that because that's the way of being successful really quickly, rather than sticking to our purpose, which from day one was to change the perception of sales and do it through a really quality-led process. So I'd say that's been a big challenge, not every year, but a number of years where the amount of ideas you've brought to board meetings where I'm like, what?
Get shot down.
What do you mean we're going there? What do you mean we're doing this? So it's sometimes it's trying to rein it back in and remember what we set out to do in the first place. So I'd say that's a challenge, because I think we were tempted on many occasions to deviate off path, but we stuck to what we're true to.
What do you think's been the biggest challenge?
Just on the point you said, Nicole, I remember the board meeting when we said about doing America, the advice we got was, why the hell would you do that? And that just made us even more driven just to do that placement.
The week after Kyle set up the American desk, it was the American flag on your chair that got me.
I think, remember that? But yeah, that was funny. It's so mad when someone says you can't or don't do something, you just almost feel a sense of greater purpose to do it.
I learned quickly with you two, they just make it your idea that it's not a good idea to do it, and then you just
make it happen then.
I thought it was our idea.
But the biggest challenges I would say is, look, COVID is an obvious one. I think there's something about when it was a really humbling experience, and what was going on, obviously unprecedented was such the cliche word that was being used at the time, but trying to cold call and capture people's attention to sell recruitment services to them when they weren't hiring, they were probably on furlough themselves, and when no one was in the office, that was a really humbling and challenging experience, but I think one that probably got the best out of me and a lot of people. So I think that was a big challenge. I'd also say the early days as well, when we did not know what we were doing. Like, as simple as that. If you think when we started the business, great idea, great process, great concept. What's a CRM system? I think we had one job board. Didn't really know. I'd never had any experience. Yeah, Excel spreadsheets galore, which we still have plenty of actually, but not as many as we did do. So I think for me that was a challenge where you really learn a lot about yourself, because you've got no other option. Those two times, COVID and at the beginning, no other option other than just to make things happen. Whereas now we're in a much better position as a business where we've got infrastructure, processes in place. But there's almost something about those most difficult times that you actually miss a little bit, I think. So I'd say they're my biggest challenges.
Too easy for you, Carl.
Huh?
Is it not too easy for you?
Easier, maybe.
I've got to ask you another question.
Go for it.
So obviously you joined a startup.
Yeah.
Literally, me and Nicole and you pretty much straight away. And it was tough at the start. It was just you many times, in the office, because we were having to make money through training and doing other things to generate the revenue. So you're literally there on your own. What made you stick with it?
Yeah, I just asked myself that question a lot. I think the thing that stuck with it, I always come back to the interview that I had with you guys where it was the passion was there, and I genuinely believed in the vision. So when the days got tough and the going got tough, it was always trying to remind yourself of the reason that you joined and got involved in the first place. But also, I wouldn't have wanted to fail. I know there's a lot of talk in a minute around sometimes leaving or quitting can actually be a good thing. For me, it wasn't an option. I wouldn't have wanted to look back and go, things got tough, so I quit and left. I mean, it was really challenging. Was often, I remember we were sharing an office, for those that don't know, with a marketing agency at the time. And the role that we do, working in a sales-based role, is pretty much on the phone all of the time. Those in marketing, no offence to them, they just don't spend that much time on the phone. So in a really quiet office, trying to be on the phone a lot, it was daunting.
Stick those noisy salespeople in the corner. Stick Kyle in the corner. It was more at the time, there wasn't anyone else. So
I also think being in those situations really helps. Again, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't sit there. The option was not be on the phone, or for the first few days and few weeks sound like a bit of an idiot, and everyone thinking, what the hell's this guy in the corner doing, speaking to candidates on the phone. But what made me stick with it was, didn't want to quit, would have seen it as a failure, but more importantly, buying into the vision very much in that first interview.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because there's a lot of people out there, potentially thinking about should I or not join a startup. I suppose what you're saying is, do you believe in the concept? And do you believe in the people you're going to be working with? And obviously, if you've got a tick to them, then why not?
Yeah.
And if you don't, then maybe it isn't the right place for you.
Yeah. A startup won't be for everyone. I think you've got to think, though, if you are thinking of joining a startup, just accept, and not that joining a big business is easy, accept there will be a different set of challenges that you will face. Things will change all of the time. There will be cases where, as amazed as you two were, you probably didn't really know what we're doing all the time. So you've got to be adaptable and move quickly. I think if you join in a startup, you just got to be aware and accept that, but actually embrace it a little bit. Because for me, when things are changing and going at a fast pace all the time, it actually makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Anyway, back onto you guys.
Yeah, that's
back
it.
onto you guys.
You can be the host again.
We spoke about challenges, all three of us. I shared kind of things I'd learned about myself actually in those challenges as well. What have been the big learns that you two have picked up over the last 10 years being in Prime? Who would like to kick off? Go on, Neil.
Biggest learns?
Whether that be about yourself or sales, whatever it may be, what have you learned, do you think, over the last 10 years?
I think the first learn is, I suppose, something I always knew, but kind of is still as evident now as it was back then, 10 years ago. And Nicole touched on it before, is I do believe having a deep-rooted why, without getting all cheese on everyone and going motivation.
Go cheese.
I feel like you have to have a really deep-rooted reason when you set up a business if you want to be successful, because there's going to be challenges, if not daily, weekly, monthly, annually. There's going to be so many challenges that a lot of people can give up on, and that's if you're in a job as well, in sales predominantly, because it is a pressurised environment, so they're not just setting up a business. So I think if you've got a deep-rooted reason why, something that's going to keep you going, even when the tough times happen, because you're never going to want to give up on that reason why, then actually, you're probably got a better chance of being successful. And I believe the reason why shouldn't always be financial as well. For me, the reason why generally should be for other people, because if you're letting other people down, then the chances are you're going to stick at it. You're not just letting yourself down. So I think that's been the biggest learn, cementing what I felt I already knew, but even 10 years on, it's so important in the challenges that we have. I don't know what you'd say to that.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many learns, isn't there, from the last 10 years? So many. I think if I pick my top ones, I think one of the biggest, and I think this has probably come more since COVID, but one of the biggest learns, I think, because pre-COVID, everything was done on motivation and passion, and we were all in the trenches together, and it was such a close-knit team, and it was camaraderie, and all of those things, and then COVID hit, and we completely had to learn, again, how to do business in a very different way. And I think at that point, I used to always believe motivation would get you through, and I think at that point I went and learned that discipline sometimes is more important than motivation, because we talk about it a lot more these days, that you sometimes just got to show up even when you don't want to. You've got to go and do it even though you don't feel like it that day, and you've got to do it to the best of your ability. And that's not motivation because you're not feeling particularly motivated that day, but that's discipline, because you'll come out the other side and you'll be so glad that you did. So I think for me, over the journey, and I think the transition we've made, discipline is often more important, and that's a big lesson I think that I've had through the journey, is that you can't be motivated every single day in sales. You can't be motivated every single day, but if you're disciplined to do it, you'll get your motivation back the next day because you'll get the results you need. So that was probably a big learn. Have fun along the way. If we actually talk about the last 10 years, we've had so much fun, and I think that's a big learn, because business is so stressful, and we've been on such a journey. We've had loads of highs, loads of lows, but my God, we've had some fun. And that, I think, sometimes forget how important that is. And I think if we look back to our biggest successes, if we go through every big success that we've had, it's always been with the most incredible team that have backed each other, got in the trenches together, gone the extra mile for each other, because they celebrated the successes together. So I felt that we've had a lot of fun whilst doing it. We can make out it's really difficult, but we still made sure we had fun along the way. So I'd say those were the main ones, but I think also you mentioned like these are learns, just keep learning. Like you doing the podcast, we still learn from every podcast you do. I genuinely think there's a day that goes by where we're not learning something new. Even in recruitment, every single day there's a new challenge that we're learning from. So I think one of the biggest things is to keep learning, be humble, don't think you know it all, because we definitely don't. We're still learning every day. So I think being open-minded but not being selective of who you learn from, because if we look at us, we're learning every day from clients, from candidates, from peers, from people we respect, our competitors. but mostly the team, because their feedback every day actually helps us evolve the business, and getting their input really helps us as well. So I think keep learning every day is definitely something we will do.
Always be learning, and I like the point on motivation as well, because it's easy to do the things when you're feeling up for it and want to do the things. When you're not feeling up for it, doing it, that's when it's really difficult, and that makes a big difference. Neil, to come on to your challenge you mentioned with the why, I think you've both touched on your why a little bit. Would you mind sharing a little bit more, if you don't mind, about your why? Because I think it might resonate with a lot of people listening to this, because you said it's not all about being financially motivated, which is associated with sales. What is your why?
A little bit different, but it comes from, as I mentioned probably at the start of the podcast, when my dad died. I was 18, and obviously at that stage of your life, it's quite challenging, no matter what stage you lose a parent, young or old, but particularly at that stage, you know, when you can go out drinking and do all these things legally, probably was a tough time. But for whatever reason, I utilised it as a motivator. And I feel when you have adversity, people go through really tough times, probably tougher times than I've been through. But if you can find it within yourself to use the adversity to be a motivator, then you'll be amazed how far that can take you. Thankfully, for whatever reason, I saw it as an opportunity to actually leave my life in Warrington, move to a city, only down the road, but to Manchester, surround myself with new people where I felt I could push myself further, get myself a new job, do all the things that went with it, and utilise making my dad proud as the motivator for doing it. So that's why when I say about your reasons why, if they're deep-rooted to the fact that I'm never going to kind of turn my back on that because I can't change it, but I can make myself a better person because of it, I'll use it as a motivator, you can achieve great success, because that reason why is as strong as it is now as it was, you know, when it actually happened. So I think using adversity for a positive reason can be the difference of succeeding and failing.
Love it. Thank you for sharing as well. I think it's really important for people that are maybe struggling with what their why and driver is. And Nicole, you don't have to do this, but this has reminded me of something many years ago that you used to say. Would you mind sharing the death row story?
Oh gosh. Oh my word. I don't know if you want to put this out there, but yeah, no, this went back to when I very first went into sales as a career, and I wasn't doing particularly well. Actually, it was in recruitment, and I'd gone into recruitment. I wasn't just going through one of those phases of not perhaps billing to the level I was capable of, and finding everything to blame but myself. And then I remember just leaving and someone saying to me, "Oh, like you've got to watch this program on death row. It's really going to be great." And I was like, "Last thing I want to do is watch this program on death row." But there was nothing else on that night, so I did. And the story was about two brothers who had quite a challenging upbringing. Their father was on death row, and they were looking at the impact that it had on their upbringing, their life, and they were like late teens, early 20s at this point. And it showcased one brother probably going down the same sort of path as their father, and the other brother moving away, getting a tiny bed sitting, getting 3 jobs and just trying to make a life for himself. And it was a fascinating story, but by the end of it, they kind of split the screen and they just sort of said, like, why do you think you are where you are right now? And word for word, they both gave the same answer, which was, look at my dad, what do you expect? Or something along those lines. And I just thought, wow, like they both had exactly the same experience, but they've taken it and tackled it in completely different ways. And I think that was my light bulb moment of going, do you know what, it's up to me. It's not up to the clients, the candidates, the business, the market, the time of year. It's completely up to me, and it is a choice. And every single day I get to wake up and make a choice and what kind of day I want to have, and I can't control certain things outside of that, where how people are going to be on the phone and things like that, but I get to choose how I deal with it each day. And I think that was my turning point. I went back the next day and I was like, yeah, I get it now. And yeah, really done. I would say that was a big turning point in recruitment for me, because it just made me realise how much I did have control over, but everything was down to making the right choices.
Yeah.
Love that story. It is a great story. We need to bring that back.
I think we do.
We do. It's so true though, isn't it?
Yeah.
How someone can use the same experience for positive and someone can use it for the opposite reason.
Yeah. Love it. Great. Thank you both for sharing. Coming almost to the end, but there's a couple of bits we want to touch on. We want to touch on the future of sales, what that looks like maybe 10 years from now. Who knows? We could be sat in this room doing the very same again, reviewing the last 10 years. First of all, for salespeople, after all, we're looking to change the perception of sales, and the idea is that hopefully at least many more people listen to this and go, after hearing that story, actually this is really a career that I want to look more into. So what advice would you both give to anyone that's maybe considering or maybe unsure about what career in sales could look like?
Well, Neil, you would be like, just do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, what have you got to lose, first of all? I mean, if you're thinking about it, then there's a reason why you're thinking about it. So I do believe, for me, my attitude is to just do it and try it, because what's the worst thing can happen? Might not work out, but guess what? Like Nicole mentioned, you'll learn from it and probably realise what then you want to do. But I think I'd probably go deeper for that as well. I think it's about choosing, I suppose, the right company. So if you're going to just do it, great, choose the right company. And for me, that company has to embrace training development, whether that's through their internal processes or using agencies like us through our Prime Sales Academy, because the tools and the experience you get early on in your career usually is a reason why you go on then to be successful longer term. Because I think a lot of people can be put off because maybe they think sales isn't for them, but maybe they've chosen the wrong company or not had the training development they need. So choose the right company, make sure it's got training development, absolute must for me, and most of all, just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Because if you fail, failure is something you learn from, and the longer you take it the positive from that learning, then it will help you work out what you want to do in the future.
Brilliant. Nicole, what advice would you give to any budding salespeople, people looking to get into the industry?
First, think about what your motivations are, and do they align to sales as a career? So what do you really want? What is important to you? Is it development? Is it progression? Is it culture? What all those things are, and then make sure those things align to sales. And if they do, just as Neil said, just give it a go, have a go. Come and find a company that will support you and give you the training and development that is needed to be successful. And then just be really, really conscious and be ready to work incredibly hard, and make sacrifices. I know that's probably the wrong thing to say, but I genuinely believe we try and make it out to be easier than it is sometimes. It's not. It's incredibly rewarding, but your first year, I think there's this saying that we use a lot, which is your first year's learning, your second year's earning. Everyone comes in thinking, oh, I'm going to earn 50 grand in my first year, and if they don't, they failed, or it's no good, and it's not what they said. And I think with us, we're kind of like, your first year's all about learning. So you're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, it's a journey, but you're going to have to make some sacrifices along the way. You're going to have to put in the extra, you're going to have to work incredibly hard, because the reward is on the other side of that sacrifice. So quick wins don't really happen in this industry. It's about accepting the fact that there is a deferred gratification. So come into it eyes wide open and know that, and if you're prepared to do that and it aligns to what you want from life and your career, then 100% give it a shot.
Brilliant, great advice. Penultimate question, a bit of a controversial one, one I wasn't planning asking, but I'm just interested based on what you both just said. Do you think someone has to be motivated by money to get into sales?
No.
No?
No.
No? Well, that's that solved then, isn't it?
No, give me a bit more about it. I wasn't initially. Yeah. I wasn't. It was, like I mentioned, I wanted to be a sales manager. I wanted to lead a team. Sales was something I felt I was good at because, you know, as much as I didn't have many other skills, I felt like I was a good communicator. So actually sales fitted me because of my communication style. And then when I became good at it, but for me, it was always about being a sales manager. One of my best mates, you know, was earning far more than me, and I was his manager at the time, right? So it depends. I don't think it has to be money, but I do believe in a sales environment, it's got to be something that's kind of progression based, financial based, or cultural based, because outside of that it can be a tough gig, and there's probably easier ways of making money if you're not motivated by those things.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a motivator, but not the motivator. So I think money has to be part of your motivation to be successful in sales, but you need other things, because money can very quickly become a demotivator in sales. If you're having a bad month or you're having a bad quarter and you're not seeing the money that you've got used to, it's very quick to think, oh, I'll go somewhere else where I can make the money, and then you become a job hopper. The reality is that money can be made, but it's not always going to be perfect. We've seen that. So you have to have other motivators alongside money. But money, I think it does need to be a motivator in sales, otherwise why would you go through all the pain? But it can't be your sole motivator.
You're in a commission-based role, so money's always going to have the factor, right? We like the nicer things in life, you know, there's a lot easier things to do. But from my own perspective, you know, even if the money wasn't there, but I could see I was progressing in the right way, then for me, I always thought longer term rather than short term. If I progress now to be a sales manager, I'm probably then going to be able to be a sales director. Then as a sales director, I might be able to set up my own business. So actually, it's just a stepping stone process along the way, but kind of never give up on it.
Yeah.
It's actually a good thing to think about as a hiring manager in sales, because if you hire someone that's sole and only motivator is money, your retention of them is going to be quite challenging, because all it takes is someone to offer them more money, and if that's the only thing that motivates them, you're not going to keep them.
It's true.
So you need to always find, and we talk about tapping into other things that are important, whether that's the culture that keeps people there, the team that they're with, or the progression that you're offering, or the development that you're giving them. All of those things have to be just as important as the money.
Brilliant. And for what it's worth, I agree as well. I don't think you necessarily need to. If I look at what we mentioned earlier, probably the two areas or two times where I've been one of the most motivated was when we started and we'd never made a placement, so we didn't even know if we could make money, and COVID when no one was hiring.
Doing it.
I know, yeah. So if I look at the two times, I've probably been most driven to make it work. It's actually been when the money probably hasn't been there in comparison to other times.
Yeah.
I think that's when we've always been at our absolute best, though, when we've been on the back foot, when we've been going through the toughest times. That's when we've excelled in our roles, and we've all played a different part to bring it back to where it needed to be.
Yeah. You can sometimes, when your back's against the wall, see both the best and worst in people. I think it can come out, so definitely agree. Final bit then, we spoke earlier around how we believe sales has changed, or the positive contribution we've made on changing the perception of sales. What do you think the future of sales looks like from this point onwards? Big question.
Yeah. Do you want to take that one first?
Do we have to talk about AI?
We've got to talk about AI, why not?
The robots are going to take over. There'll be no salespeople left. I do not believe that whatsoever, because I think the human interaction of salespeople is, so to put it out there, I don't think AI will take over, but I think if we embrace it and utilise it, it can enhance sales performance. But I think, firstly, more and more people now are being proud to call themselves salespeople. I think that's changed a lot in 10 years. So in 10 more years, maybe, that's what people will be even prouder to call themselves, rather than being, out with friends and someone asks what you do and you kind of say, well, I'm a kind of business executive or whatever. No, I sell things. That's what I used to say. So I think being proud of that, I think that's kind of helping. I like to think that we'll get more diversity that is continuing. Obviously, being in business with Nicole, being female, there is still a lack of female leaders in the industry. We did a webinar about it, and you'll probably know the stats better than me, Carl, through the podcast series, but it's still male dominated. And our 3 top billers, as you know, last year were all female. So there's something in that I think that we should be promoting a lot more along the way. So I think that will definitely increase, but it needs to accelerate a little bit further for me. I don't know what you'd add to that.
Yeah, I think I was very much old school anti-AI, oh here we go. But now I've actually started to embrace it, I quite like it. I just see the value of it, and I think it's finding the right balance, isn't it? And it's actually saved me time. So I think for salespeople where we're talking about how things are evolving and the personalisation and having to be a little bit more specific in your outreach and things like that, that can be really time consuming. And if you're a salesperson that's got to hit numbers and make things happen, having tools like that are actually really advantageous. If you're approaching a very complex business, trying to navigate your way around their website and really understand what they do so you can have a good conversation with them, it's a lot easier to put it into AI and get them to explain it to you in simple terms. But it genuinely, I believe, will save us a lot of time, which means we could be more productive in the job. So I do think there's huge value to it, but I agree. I think salespeople will always be needed, and I think Neil said it earlier on, it is the core of every business. Without salespeople, you'll never have a business as successful. Going back in the day, taking you right back to my Virgin days, it was really interesting, and I don't think the statistics would naturally change for salespeople, but back then we used to trend what percentage of sales were done through face-to-face versus through telephone versus through the website, and also the value of the sale. And the face-to-face was always far greater in the value of the sale. People would go for the cheapest or the middle range option online because it was there. They would go do the same on the phone because it was easier to say no to somebody over the phone than face-to-face. But when we sat down with them in person, we're able to have a conversation with them, really understand what they actually needed, and tailor a package to them, the package value was always far greater, but the retention was always far higher as well. So I think interaction is so much more powerful, and I don't think that will ever change.
And imagine this, because Prime may never have been a thing if ChatGPT was a thing, because my books would have been written perfectly and Nicole could have told me how bad they were. So thankfully it wasn't around then at the time.
Thankfully AI came in a few years later, that is good. Right, well I think that has brought us to the end. Really enjoyed the conversation. I feel like we could do another one on some of our highlights and funniest moments, but they might not be suitable for on air. But thank you both, really enjoyed the conversation, and let's continue to change the perception of sales.
Yeah, thanks
you.
Kyle,
Thanks
enjoyed
for
that.
the last 10 years.